Sinister Sisters! It's Sinister Sunday! It's Sinister Sunday.
Yay.
You know what that means.
The best day of the week.
Yes! Okay, so this week is my episode, which means it's a true crime episode, which is fun.
Ish.
Today, well, yes, ish. Today is definitely not fun because we're talking about the case of Jamie Bulger, which was recommended by Sinister Mum.
It was.
Before we talk about this, though,
Yeah.
it is a very, very heavy case, and it just kind of makes you feel icky inside. So
It does.
Please keep that in mind when you choose how and if and when you consume this episode. And if this is one that you skip, then that's fine.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't really know too much about the case itself, so.
Yes, it's a lot. So the specific content warnings for the case, like murder, the death of a child, the abuse of a child, I suppose, they're not really like anything out of the ordinary for this podcast, but
Yeah.
it's just this case is kind of, well, it's very
Horrifying.
heavy. Yeah, horrifying. With that being said, let's get into it. So,
Okay.
The murder of James Patrick Bulger was a tragic and widely publicized case that occurred in the United Kingdom in 1993. James, who most people called Jamie, he was only 2 years old when he was abducted from a shopping centre in Bootle, Merseyside, by two 10-year-old boys by the names of Robert Thompson and John Venables. The CCTV footage from the New Strand shopping centre in Bootle on February 12th, 1993, showed Thompson and Venables observing and selecting a target among the children. They were playing truant from their local primary school and had been shoplifting throughout the day. One of the boys later admitted in the interrogations that they were in that they had planned to abduct a child and to take him to a busy road beside the shopping centre and push him into oncoming traffic. Unfortunately, Jamie Bulger was their target, and they abducted him from the shopping centre. They said they were going to abduct a child, and just happened that James was in the wrong place at the very wrong time. His mum, Denise, her name is, she said that she literally took her eyes off him for 1 minute. If that.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So, there were several eyewitnesses to the abduction of Jamie because they were in a mall, a shopping centre. They were seen by a large number of people, including James's mother, Denise, and several other shoppers, many of whom believed Jamie was their younger brother. And this is what they told the two people that did actually challenge them, because Jamie, of course, was sobbing.
Yeah.
And obviously didn't look very comfortable. And so two people did challenge the 10-year-olds, and they claimed that Jamie was their brother to one, and they told the second one that he was a lost child that they were taking to, like, the information booth or the, like, security people in the mall. Most people who saw this, the two who didn't challenge the kids, just thought, like, these are children. There's nothing that they're going to be doing that is going to cause any harm to this 2-year-old. Like, they're 10. They're not
Right.
committing a crime.
Yeah.
Yes. During the day, there were several eyewitnesses who saw Thompson and Venables acting suspiciously and engaging in shoplifting in the hours leading up to the abduction, and these witnesses eventually gave evidence in the trial. and it was an important part of the prosecution's case against Thompson and Venables, as it helped to establish the timeline and the actions of the two boys leading up to and following the abduction and murder. There is a lot of footage of this case online because a lot of it, like even the abduction, was caught on CCTV. I think we just talked about that, but it's very like documented, the whole timeline of the case.
Yeah.
After abducting James, the boys took him on a long and brutal journey during which they beat him with bricks and iron bars and poured paint into his eyes. Jamie was found to have 42 injuries, and none of them could be identified as the fatal blow. They eventually left him on a railway track where he was hit by a train. The conductor thought that it was a rabbit or some other small animal, which wasn't uncommon for this area. Children then found Jamie's body 2 days later while playing on the train tracks. One of the only good things about this case is that forensic pathologists testified that Jamie was dead before he was struck by the train. So, at least there's that.
Yeah, a small mercy, I suppose.
Yeah. John and Robert were very quickly thought of to be suspects because they were seen in the shopping centre. They were seen walking Jamie out of the shopping centre, and they were not at school. And they were known, like, they played truant a lot. They were not at school a lot, and they had issues when they were at school. They were problem children. So they were very quickly brought in by police to be interviewed, in which John initially denied any involvement in Jamie's disappearance and murder. He claimed that him and Robert Thompson had been in a nearby shopping centre at the time of James' abduction and that they hadn't seen him. However, under questioning, he eventually admitted to being present when James was taken and to playing a role in his abduction and murder. They both blamed the other, each boy blamed the other, and their interrogation tapes are online, and they are wild because they sound so young and vulnerable, and then you realize that you're listening to a murderer try to divert suspicion from himself and onto his also 10-year-old friend. It's a really, really weird mix because they have very childlike emotions and their voices are obviously very childlike. Like, they sob and their mums are with them, and John Venables can be like, "Mum, I didn't do it. Like, Mummy, you have to believe me." And, like, that's very childlike. But then it's coupled with this very sophisticated, like, knowledge of what they've done and that it was bad and how they can possibly get out of it. Like, it's very weird. It's like, you know, that word.
Juxtaposition.
Yeah, that's the one. The police used a variety of techniques during the interviews, including questioning, persuasion, and confrontation to elicit information from the boys. And some critics have argued that the police were too aggressive in their questioning and that this may have influenced John's confession specifically. However, others have defended the police's methods, arguing that they were necessary to uncover the truth about Jamie's murder. I think a lot of that sentiment that they were too aggressive comes from the fact that they are children.
Yeah.
But they are murderous children. So again, that's... kind of
children, but forgetting what they have done or had done.
So following the massive police investigation and the widespread public outrage, Thompson and Venables were arrested and charged with Jamie's murder on February 18th, 1993, just 5 days after the abduction and his murder.
Wow.
The arrest actually came after police received a tip-off from a family member of the public who had recognized the boys from the CCTV footage that had been released to the media. And she called in and she said, "This is John Venables." They were tried and convicted in an adult court, which made them the youngest people to ever stand trial for murder in English criminal history.
Wow.
The trial was highly controversial, with many arguing that the boys were too young to understand the seriousness of their actions and should have been tried in a juvenile court. However, the judge ultimately ruled that the boys were capable of understanding the nature of their crime and the consequences of their actions. And a lot of this came from the fact that they did try to hide it. If they didn't realize that murder was wrong, then they would have just been like, oh yeah, I did that. But
and also I think the like torture.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to be like, I don't know, playing and being rough and you accidentally hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like a multi-hour, like a 12-hour ordeal, right?
Yeah, it was
if
a
I
long
remember
time.
correctly. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that also points to like pre-planning, some knowledge of what you're doing.
Yeah, an understanding of what you're doing is wrong. Because that's one of the burdens of proof with a not guilty by insanity plea, is that you have to prove that you didn't know what you were doing is wrong at the time.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. You have to prove that you didn't know that it was wrong.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to hide it and you try to cover it up and all of that, then you knew it was wrong because you were trying to hide the fact that you did it, right?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if you're getting to this, but I think that I've read previously as well that either it was a theory at the time or someone had said at the time, like one of the two boys, that they put him on the train tracks because they wanted to make it look like he had been hit by a train by accident.
Yeah. That was, I think that was said by one of them actually, that was the plan.
Yeah. Which
that they wanted it. Yeah.
Like that's just clear proof that they knew that it was wrong.
Yes.
And actually kind of a relatively intelligent manner of covering up what they had done. Because
yes,
in theory, if there hadn't have been other factors, then that excuse might have gone over, right?
Absolutely,
that could have been...
Because Jamie's injuries were, or could have been, I suppose, consistent with being hit by a train. Like, he was bruised and things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't mention it, but, and content warning for sexual assault right now, but police did think that perhaps Jamie was assaulted because his clothing on the lower part of his body was removed. So that also led to him not have being hit by a train by accident.
Right. Yeah.
So that's like one of the reasons that police knew that wasn't what happened.
Makes sense. Yeah.
After the trial that lasted several weeks, Thompson and Venables were found guilty of the murder of Jamie Bulger and were sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure with a term of 10 years, a minimum term of 10 years. The judge described the murder as an act of, quote, unparalleled evil and barbarity, and noted that the boys had shown no remorse for their actions. Her Majesty's pleasure, we've talked about this in a few other cases, but it's a legal term used in the United Kingdom to refer to the power of the monarch to order the detention of an individual who is being convicted of a crime and sentenced to an indeterminate term of imprisonment. I guess it would be His Majesty's pleasure now.
Yeah.
But basically it's like, you're in prison until I say you're not. Which is...
basically like a life sentence without parole sentence in the States.
Right. It is only used for the most serious of cases, so that also goes to show that this was not... like, they knew, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
During the trial, this was a very, like, hot topic, I suppose, is how on earth... So, 10-year-olds, 10, 11-year-olds committing murder is kind of wild in general.
Yeah.
2 of them in the same town who both had murderous tendencies is also kind of unheard of, right? So, there was a lot of discourse around the case as to who was the ringleader, who was more dominant, who caused it, basically. The
Yeah.
idea is that one of the boys was predispositioned to this kind of behavior, and the other one was kind of a follower and just kind of went along with whatever the other one wanted.
Yeah.
And so during the trial, it was suggested that Robert Thompson was the more dominant of the two boys, and that he had a greater role in carrying out everything. But as you'll see, as we'll talk about later, Robert Thompson has not committed any other crimes since that we know of. John Venables has. So that's for you to make your own decision about, I guess. They were eventually released on parole in 2001 after serving only 8 years in custody. They were given new identities and placed under lifelong supervision to protect them from vigilante attacks. However, John, again, has since been returned to prison on separate occasions for unrelated offences. These orders prohibit their identities from being made public and prohibit the media from publishing any information that could lead to their identification. In 2010, however, John Venables was returned to prison after being found guilty of downloading and distributing indecent images of children. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison for these offences. Upon release, he was given another new identity, and he was returned to jail in 2017, again for more charges based on CSAM. I couldn't find any information about how we knew that. How we know that he's been back to prison, especially since they're not supposed to know who he is anymore. But I think that's kind of just yes, it's illegal for this to be published because he's supposed to not be talked about. I think it's just kind of another, just kind of allowed because of the things that he's done.
And I wonder, I don't know how it works, but I wonder if you are convicted of a crime, I think you lose some of your rights to privacy.
Yeah, there's that too.
Because I believe in Canada anyway that all court proceedings are
public, yeah.
Public. And I would imagine probably in a conviction on a CSAM type of charge where previous convictions are relevant, that it would come up in the sort of process of the court proceedings. That would be my best guess on why we know this about him recently.
Yeah, I would also think that it doesn't reveal who he is now or where he's been. It doesn't tell us his new identity or what his life was in between the convictions. So I guess maybe that's the part that's private.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, when he's just a citizen.
Yeah. In 2019, Jamie's father, Ralph, lost a legal challenge to lift the lifelong order protecting Venables' anonymity. It was turned down due to the, quote, uniquely notorious nature of the case and that there was a, quote, strong possibility, if not probability, that if his identity were known, he would be pursued, resulting in grave and possibly fatal consequences. Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I think let him burn, but that's not how life works.
Yes. Yeah. So. And this case is so notorious that I think we both have knowledge of it happening, and it happened and they were convicted long before we existed. So
yeah, we were. Well, it was 1993.
Yeah.
So I wasn't born. You weren't born. Sinister Mum and Sinister Dad were married, but
not.
We were just a glimmer.
I don't like that when people say that. It makes me uncomfortable. Just a sparkle in your dad's eye, aren't you?
Yeah, no. I was vibing with the stalk. That's how I was invented.
That's how conception works.
It is. Immaculately. That's why you and me, we are immaculate. Anyways. In June of 2019, reports emerged that British officials had considered resettling John Venables in Canada, Australia, or New Zealand due to the high cost of protecting his anonymity. The report suggested that British authorities had spent £65,000 in legal fees to maintain Venables' anonymity and protect him from potential vigilante attacks. However, the reports were met with widespread criticism and opposition from the public and politicians, who argued that Venables should not be allowed to start a new life abroad given the seriousness of his crimes. In response to the media coverage, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinta Ardern made it clear that Venables would need an exemption under New Zealand's Immigration Act of 2009 and that he would not be welcome in the country. She said that he should, quote, not bother applying.
Oh, how tactful.
We love her. Yeah.
Yes.
She's actually really cool from what I can understand. Like,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure she like was prime minister and she had a baby at the same time, and she's like the only acting prime minister in like a lot of places that had a child while in office.
That's cool.
I watched a TikTok the other day. This is really off topic, but I watched a TikTok the other day, and it was Trump supporters at a rally saying that Trump was in charge of the military and that he is still the president, and that there are two separate militaries, a good one and a bad one. I know. Like, hello? Right.
The United States consistently falls very low on the education ranking, the global education rankings.
Yeah.
And so we'll just blame it on that.
These were old ladies. And like, the really scary part is that they can vote.
Yes.
Anyways. To my knowledge, from what I could find, there has been no public record of Robert Thompson ever being returned to jail since his release on parole in 2001. So that's where a lot of the like conversation comes from about who, or like the resurgence of the conversation, I guess, about which one was the ringleader. In that John Venables is obviously disturbed in some way because he ingests CSAM, and it could just be that Robert Thompson is way better at hiding it, you know?
Could be. Yeah.
We have no idea what the vibes are. So, this case obviously caused a lot of media coverage and a lot of conversation and a lot of criticism. So this next part of this episode, we're talking specifically about the aftermath and the criticisms of this case. As I said earlier, the police investigation into his murder was very controversial and the subject of significant criticism. Some critics argued that the police were too quick to focus on the possibility of a family member being involved in the crime rather than pursuing other lines of inquiry, which I don't know, because they were arrested 5 days after it happened, and
yeah, it seems really fast.
Family members are always the first like suspect, but not even necessarily because police believe they are actually a suspect, but just because they are so close to the victim that it's a logical next step, right?
Yeah. I think something like 90% of child abductions are from family members.
Yeah.
Something like really high.
Yeah. And most people are murdered by people that they know. So
yes. It
makes sense that they would. I don't know how hard they focused on family members, but I don't know, that seems like a silly point to me. But
yeah.
The police also faced criticism for the way that they handled the public search for him, which some argued may have compromised the investigation. There were reports of the police releasing inaccurate information to the media, which may have hampered the investigation and led to a rush to judgment. I'm pretty sure police maybe don't lie, but they definitely don't tell us everything when they're investigating a crime, because
yeah,
like that's one of the interrogation Yeah, that's one of the interrogation techniques that they use, is that, oh, we never told you that this thing happened during this crime, but so you know something, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously I wasn't
Yeah.
there, so I don't know, like, the full vibe of the, like, conversations about it, but there were also concerns about the way the police treated Robert Thompson and John Venables during the investigation and the subsequent trial. Some argued that, again, the police were overly aggressive in their questioning and that it may have influenced the outcome. Despite these criticisms, it is worth noting that the police faced, obviously, a highly challenging and complex investigation into James's murder, and that they were working under intense pressure from the media and the public to solve the case.
Yeah.
The case also highlighted the difficulties of investigating crimes involving children and the need for greater sensitivity and understanding of child psychology and behavior. It was kind of like, it still is, but it's a very unknown area of law, is
Yeah.
violent crimes committed by children. It's like not something that happens very often.
Yeah. I can only think of
Yeah.
very few examples. One of which is a Criminal Minds episode. So,
which case?
it has Elle Fanning in it, and this like little boy gets kids in the woods and then he chases them. Yeah.
Fun fact: a lot of Criminal Minds episodes are actually based on real cases, so
yeah,
that could be a real thing.
Could be a real thing, but yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Anyway. The case also raised a number of important issues around, like, the media, including the nature of childhood criminality, which we just talked about, the effectiveness of the juvenile justice system, and the role in the media of reporting on crime and justice. There were calls for tougher penalties for juvenile offenders and greater public scrutiny of the justice system, the juvenile justice system. The case also led to an increased public awareness of the risks of child abduction and the need for greater vigilance in safeguarding children. The media coverage of the case also came under scrutiny, with some critics arguing that the intense media attention and public anger may have influenced the decision to try the boys as adults and led to a rush to judgment again. The case highlighted the difficult balance between the right to a fair trial and the public's right to know. Because you do have
tough.
both of those. You do have the right to know what's happening in your justice system, because the justice system works for the people,
right?
Allegedly, but also criminals and people accused of a crime have the right to a fair and unbiased trial.
Yeah.
So those two do not always work in conjunction with each other.
No, it's hard when there's these highly publicized cases, especially in smaller places when there's like a smaller jury pool to pull from. It's difficult.
Cases are often in small towns tried in a different town.
Yeah.
In a different court system, I suppose, because the pickings are so slim for the jury.
Yeah.
Because it has to be someone that doesn't know about the case and who isn't going to have some sort of bias towards it.
Yeah.
It could be argued that mothers shouldn't have been able to be on the jury in this case because they have kids, and so they're biased against people with kids or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Very difficult. Jury selection it's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I think it must be so freaking hard. And you have to know so much about the case and also people and how people act and the way that they make their decisions to know, like, if this person's going to be a good juror or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they dismiss you for, like, any connection at all to the legal system. So you don't even have to have knowledge of the case, but if you have, like, a sibling who's a lawyer or a third cousin who works in the police force, then they don't let you on the jury, which is interesting because there's a lot of connections like that, again, in, like, small communities. So
yeah, it makes me wonder how there's enough people to pick from.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
'Cause
there is.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's so hard because it's like your duty as a citizen of a country is to help justice to continue along. But it's
Yeah.
like I could not listen to evidence and see pictures and hear testimony about a 2-year-old being
I
murdered.
know.
It would be so hard.
I think I would need therapy for the rest of my life
Yeah.
after seeing something like that. I think most
Yeah.
people would be
Yeah.
extraordinarily traumatized.
Absolutely. It's such like it's so against human nature.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
yet so vital
Yeah.
to protecting the good
Human
parts
nature.
of human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're very philosophical today.
We are. It's the concerto.
Ooh, the concerta.
And also my mocktail.
Oh, very nice. Of course, continuing on with the episode, of course, the case had a profound impact on the families of the 3 young boys. The Bulger family has been very vocal in their criticisms of the juvenile justice system and the way that the case was handled, while, again, Thompson and Venables are under lifelong anonymity orders and have lived under the constant threat of vigilante attacks. In the years following James's death, the Bulger family had been active in campaigning for justice for James and for improvements in the criminal justice system. They have also been vocal in their criticisms of the way the case was handled by the police and the courts. Denise Fergus, Jamie's mother, has been particularly active in campaigning for justice for her son. She's written a number of books about the case and has spoken publicly about the impact of Jamie's murder on her life and the lives of her family. She's also been involved in campaigns to strengthen victims' rights and improve support for families affected by crime. In 2018, she called for a public inquiry into the handling of her son's case, arguing that there were still unanswered questions about the circumstances of Jamie's murder and the way the case was handled by the authorities. No public inquiry so far has been launched. Overall, of course, the case remains a complex and controversial issue that continues to raise important questions about crime, justice, the rights of victims, offenders, and the wider public.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The juvenile detention, or the juvenile, justice system is very bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, on one hand, I totally understand that, people sometimes commit crimes as youths because their problem solving and their critical thinking skills haven't been fully developed, and maybe they've been exposed to things in their homes or in their family lives or their communities that kind of predispose them to acting in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it does also seem like sometimes especially in cases like this, where it seems so obvious that the youths involved were not acting necessarily out of a lack of critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And they almost get off like way easier, because if this had been an adult or a pair of adults tried in this case, they would never have got out of prison. They would have been sentenced for life. So yeah, it's tricky because I understand it from both sides, and I don't really know what the right answer is.
Well, it's hard to know because it's hard to know why the kid did it, right? Like, are they... Kids are sponges, so have they seen their parents, like, hitting each other or acting violently towards other people, and they think that that's just the way it's supposed to be? Or are they a sociopath?
Yeah, I was wondering that too. If it ever came to light during the trial that they had been exposed by an adult to this sort of thing.
Not that I know of. But...
Yeah, it just seems bizarre. Like it. Yeah. I mean, insert my tinfoil hat on.
Yeah, absolutely.
but it seems like there should be an adult involved in this case. You know what I mean? Like, there should be an adult who was grooming them to behave in this way, or an adult who was showing them violent things. Like, I don't know, snuff films, things like that, right? Exist. And it just, I don't know. I guess sometimes people are just unwell.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the fascination, I suppose, with this case, is the fact that there was no adult that we know of course.
Yeah.
There was no adult. And it was literally a 10 and 11-year-old who did this. They planned to do it. They figured out how the best way to do it was, and they premeditated and went about it themselves.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. And we only assume that they couldn't have done that because we assume children to be innocent at all times, right?
True. Yeah.
And I guess things like this show that they aren't.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Wild.
That is our episode for today. Make sure you check out the case file.
Yeah.
If you want. We mentioned this in another episode, but I'm going to say it again. The case files are not graphic. They're not violent. They're not yucky in any way. It just kind of... we use them as like a way to put a face to a name, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jamie was a person, and you know, he's not just for public interest, you know? I think it's nice to be able to see him in his cute little sweaters and...
as a child, yeah. Being a kid, yeah.
Being a kid and not just the spectacle that he has become.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Agreed. And friends, we suggest a self-care activity to debrief. Yeah. I am going to drink my mocktail and play Minecraft. So
I'm going to drink a cup of tea and play The Sims.
Yes. We're in our video game era.
We are. Well, did we ever really leave it? No.
Nope.
Not me. Love The Sims. Anyways, thank you for tuning in.
Yes, thank you.
I feel weird like promoting our like Instagram and stuff. So
yeah.
All of that, if you want to find it, will be in descriptions and things.
Descriptions. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.